The forest behind our house has always been something like a white spot on the map. Not literally, of course, it was on maps and satellite images, but in the minds of the locals it remained something unexplored, as if deliberately ignored. People were walking along the edge of the forest, walking dogs, and sometimes teenagers set up tents near the road, but no one ventured too far. Not because they were afraid, but rather because no one saw the point. This was not the forest that invited. It was not an exuberant green, but dull and dense. The shadows from the branches lay in unnaturally straight lines even at noon. The air in it seemed quieter than it should be. I moved here after the divorce. After leaving the bustling city center and exhausting shifts at an IT company, I bought a small house that used to belong to some old guy who died alone. The house was in good condition, but there was this damn forest attached to it, literally 2 meters from the backyard. I knew it was there when I bought the house, of course, but I didn't think much of it. Privacy was important to me, and the forest seemed like a convenient barrier from prying eyes. I didn't know then how much he would fit into my life. The first few weeks were calm. I settled in, adjusted my life, chose where to hang my paintings, and got rid of the constant noise. At first, the silence seemed oppressive, especially at night, when you suddenly realize that everything around you is too quiet. No cars, no neighbors, no voices, just the crackle of wood from the cold and the occasional crunch of a branch outside. It seems like nonsense, but over time it starts to creep into my head. One day, while sorting things out in the garage, I came across an old wooden box. It was nailed shut, but it didn't look like something valuable, but like something hidden. Curiosity got the better of him. I opened it with a tire iron. Inside were faded photographs, several notebooks, and an unsigned CD. The pictures were strange, almost all of them were taken in the forest. Some showed just trees, others showed some kind of wooden structures tied with ropes, with scrap metal driven into the ground, and one showed an illegible black and white photograph of the earth with what looked like a doll without a head. The notebooks were covered with scribbles, more like the notes of a man who did not expect anyone to ever read them. Judging by the handwriting, they were written by an old man, the former owner of the house. He noted the dates, described how on certain nights he hears footsteps outside the window, and how in the morning he finds cuts on tree trunks that were missing the day before. He even sketched what the signs looked like: crossed branches, symbols made of rags thrown on branches. I should have thrown it all away. Or at least leave her alone. But I couldn't. It settled in my head. And, probably, it was from that moment that everything went wrong. I started walking in the woods. Not too far away, about 10 minutes deep. I took a flashlight with me, sometimes a camera. I was looking for the same signs that were in the pictures. And, as luck would have it, he found them. The first ones are at the edge of the forest. Then deeper. Crisscross branches, ropes stretched tightly between the trees, as if someone had made traps, but not for animals. On one of my walks, I found an old staircase leading down. It was covered with a rusty metal lid and half hidden among the bushes. It didn't look like part of the infrastructure, no signs of work. Everything is overgrown. It looks like an ordinary hole in the ground, maybe for storing something in the past. But there was nothing inside except debris, dirt, and some kind of old jacket. I didn't get inside, I just took a couple of pictures and left. But it was a start. From that moment on, the forest became different. Not for anyone else, but for me. It was as if he saw that I had started digging, and began to throw in new things. I began to find strange objects, charred toys, bloody scraps of cloth, metal hooks driven into trees. It all felt like it had been carefully forgotten. As if someone wanted it to disappear, but didn't bury it deep enough. One day I discovered a whole pair of children's shoes, a left shoe with yellow lacing. He was standing in the middle of a forest path, clean, as if he had just been taken off. At that moment, I couldn't understand why my hands were shaking. It's just shoes. But inside, there was a feeling that someone was nearby. Very close. I stopped and listened, but nothing happened. Just silence. I didn't take the shoe, I just left. But when I returned the next day, he was gone. As well as footprints on the ground. I started sleeping poorly. The forest rang in my head even at night. I'd put the camera on the back porch, and it would record the rustling sounds, as if someone were slowly passing by and then stopping. But there's nothing on the record. Just the sound. I started smoking, even though I quit 10 years ago. I sat on the porch in the evenings with a lamp and waited, as if something was going to appear. And it appeared. One morning, when I woke up, I found a small note near the door. It was handwritten, very small, as if the person was afraid that someone would read it. It said, "You found the wrong thing. Walk alone and you'll leave like the others." I held the note in my hands as if it might heat up or move. The paper was damp, as if someone had just left it. The ink had spread a little, but the words were clear. The handwriting was uneven, as if it had been written in a hurry, with a trembling hand. I stood there looking at her for a long time, and then I just sat on the porch and lit a cigarette for the umpteenth time. There was no fear like in the movies, not the one when you rush to the phone or grab a knife. There was something else, like cold water inside. For the first time, I felt that all this was not just a coincidence, not my fantasies or the stress of moving. Someone was actually watching. I started going over in my head who could have left it. Neighbors? But the nearest house is half a kilometer away, and the old man and his wife hardly leave. Children? There are no children here at all. I didn't know anyone. I didn't even want to know. I avoided meetings, didn't go to the shops unnecessarily. But now it became clear that someone was watching. And not by chance. I went into the house, took the camera, checked the old pictures. I started to zoom in, look at the corners, the edges. Suddenly someone flashed in the background? Nothing. Just the forest, the mud, the moss. But it all seemed the wrong ones. It's like I've missed a detail. The one that you only see later, when it's too late. I turned on the laptop, inserted the disc I found in the box. It took longer than usual to load. The screen blinked, and the player opened. Video. Without a name. One file. I clicked Start. The first thing I heard was heavy breathing. The camera was shaking. The shooting took place at night, in the forest, in the beam of a flashlight. In the video, someone was walking through the forest, clearly knowing the way. Sometimes the light picked out twisted trees, boot prints in the mud, old pieces of cloth tied to branches. Then the sound. A click. It was like opening a lid. The camera was looking down, the same hatch that I found. The same manhole. Someone was coming down inside, the stairs creaked. His breathing quickened. I could hear someone whispering to himself, but I couldn't make out the words. The camera illuminated the wall for a second, and I saw a black inscription, "Do not climb." Then there was a sudden jerk, the shooting stopped. I turned off the computer and sat in silence for a long time. I promised myself not to take another step into the forest. That's all, that's enough. Close the door, burn the note, forget. But deep down, something itched. Question. Who shot this video? What's in there? Why hasn't the hatch been filled in yet? And who left the note? I went back there the next day anyway. It's already afternoon. With a shovel. He walked carefully, slowly. Not a sound. The birds seemed to have disappeared. The forest was mute. As I approached the hatch, the ground around me was disturbed. Someone was digging here after me. And the lid was lifted, as if someone had recently come out. I stood clutching the shovel, feeling the sweat trickle down my back, even though it was cool. I made the decision to go to sleep. To hell with it. Right on top. I started throwing dirt, leaves, branches. He was loading rocks from above. I needed this place to disappear, at least visually. The work took more than an hour. Then I stood there, looking at what I had done, and realized that I had not solved anything. I just hid it, as others had hidden it before me. I didn't sleep last night again. I left the lamp on in the kitchen. A light near the back door. The door is locked and bolted. A couple of times it seemed that someone was walking along the site, but it could have been the wind. Or maybe not. I was just sitting on the couch, clutching my car keys. They were like a plan B for me. If something happens, just sit down and leave. The next day, I decided to go to the forest from the other side. There is a path that I saw on the satellite map that led from an old farm that was abandoned many years ago. I drove there in my car, parked it at the curb, and walked. The forest there was different, not so gloomy. Sunspots on the ground, dry leaves, the smell of pine. And yet, after 10 minutes of walking, everything returned, silence, heavy air, and the very feeling that someone was nearby. I came across a tree with an old metal plaque nailed to it. The writing was faded, but I could make it out, private property. Passage is prohibited. But beyond it, among the bushes, I saw a path. It was obviously supported by someone. It was not overgrown, the leaves were cleared. I followed it. Carefully. Quietly. Soon I saw something in the distance, like a hut or a hut. A small, uneven structure made of planks and metal. Nearby there is a barrel, an old tire, and crates. Everything is overgrown, but clearly not abandoned. Just a couple of days ago, someone was here. I walked closer, my heart pounding. I looked inside. Not a soul. Inside there is a mattress, empty cans, matchboxes. Someone lived here. Or lives. And he's very close. There was a nail on the wall, and the same children's shoe was hanging on it, a left shoe with yellow lacing. That's the one. Only now it's dirty. There's dried mud on the sole, but no blood. I stepped back and went outside. I took a couple of pictures. For a second, I had the thought of setting fire to the cabin. But I didn't dare. That would be an invasion. And I was already a stranger here. When I got home, it was already dark. I took a shower, tried to eat, but it didn't work. I turned on the TV just for the sound. He lay down on the sofa, but did not sleep. One thing was spinning in my head: who left the note? Who lived in the hut? Who's watching? In the morning, I was awakened by a thud. 3 strokes. Clear. At first I thought I was dreaming. Then 3 more. I went to the front door. No one. There's just a piece of cloth hanging on the handle. Tightly rolled up like a ribbon. And there's a little nail in it. I looked at this nail pressed into the fabric as a warning. It seems like a small thing, a piece of dirty tape and an old rusty nail. But in the context of everything that was happening, it looked like a clear message. Not a note, not a trace, but a thing that could not be interpreted otherwise. They found me. I was warned. Or they checked how I would react. I stood at the door and slowly closed it. Without slamming, not loudly, but carefully, as if he was afraid to provoke someone who might still be nearby. That night, I heard footsteps again. This time I didn't wait. I went to the window and opened the curtain. It was dark, but because of the light from the kitchen, it was possible to see the plot. Further on, at the edge of the forest, someone was standing. I didn't hide, I didn't run away. He just stood there, looking in my direction. I didn't see the face. It was too far away. But the way the man stood motionless, with his head slightly lowered, made me feel a primal fear inside. I moved away from the window, not turning on the light anymore. In the morning I found the tracks. Right by the porch, in the grass. Someone has been standing here for quite a long time. The footprints were heavy and deep. And then they went to the forest, along the already familiar path. I didn't know why this man was coming. It wasn't a threat, it wasn't an attempt to take something. It was, as an observation. Presence. A constant reminder that you are not alone. I've made a decision. To leave. I didn't need anything else, no answers, no evidence, no peace. Just leave. Pick up a laptop, a camera, a couple of things. Let the rest disappear. But there was one more thing to do before leaving. I needed to get back to that place. The trapdoor, the forest, the hut, all this was supposed to get the final point. At least some clarity. At least an understanding of what I was facing. I went that way again, taking a detour, following the old path from the farm. In the daytime. With a backpack that contained a camera, a flashlight, gloves, and a knife. Not as a weapon, but rather to feel at least some imaginary peace. When I got to the hut, someone was already there. The car was parked further in the woods. I noticed it from the hill. An old SUV. No numbers. I didn't come over. I just sat down behind a tree and started watching. A figure flashed through the window, a man in a black jacket, a hood. He wasn't looking for something. He was rearranging things as if he was putting everything in order. Then he opened the lid in the floor of the hut, I hadn't noticed it before, and began to lower the bundles inside. All this happened in complete silence. He never looked out. I started filming. I knew that I would never come back here again. That this is the last moment. I decided to leave without waiting for him to come out. It's too risky. I put the camera away, threw my backpack and went back along the trail. It felt like someone was looking at my back, but I didn't turn around. The forest seemed to freeze, like a scene before the last frame. By the time I got to the car, it was already getting dark. I started the engine and drove slowly, without lights, until I got out onto the highway. I left that night. Non-stop, no sleep. I ran away as if I was being chased by someone who couldn't be seen. I did not return home. I sold the plot through an agent, without telling him anything. I didn't explain what was in those photos, I didn't show the recordings. He just disappeared. And since then, I don't spend the night in houses where the windows overlook the forest. I don't walk the paths. I don't trust silence anymore. Because one day I heard it, and I realized that it wasn't peace. It's someone nearby. Just waiting. I tried to forget. Sincerely. I changed my number, moved to another city, and stopped going out into the woods even for walks. In those weeks, I avoided any conversations about nature, hiking, or even photos of trees. Every rustle of the wind outside the window at night caused an inner tremor, even though I was already in stone walls, among people, far from those places. But even surrounded by cars, streetlights, and city noise, the fear remained. He didn't scream, he didn't catch my eye, he didn't wake me up at night, he just sat somewhere inside, as if I had an infection and couldn't get rid of it. Sometimes I found myself looking back in the rearview mirror. Or I checked the locks twice before going to bed. Or I turn off the light in the apartment to see if there is anyone outside the window. And every time, nothing. Emptiness. Just my reflection and the empty streets. But the instinct wouldn't let go. I decided to figure it out one day. Not with the forest. With him. With memory. I reviewed the recordings from the camera, from the day when I was sitting in the bushes by the hut. I slowed down, brought it closer. And suddenly I noticed. In one of the shots, when a figure in a black jacket lowers parcels into the hatch, the contents are briefly visible. Not garbage. Not tools. And the children's clothes rolled up in a bundle. Small shoes. The toy is a stuffed rabbit. It was like someone was collecting someone else's past. Or kept it. I stopped recording. Get up. I was just walking around the room. I didn't have the words. There is no logic. But it felt like I had taken the lid off something deeply buried. It wasn't just a forest. They were people. Those who lived nearby. Those who drove by. Or maybe he was disappearing. I started looking. Through the news. Forums. Archives. Without expectations. But soon I came across an article from 10 years ago. The girl's disappearance. The location is the same area where my site was. No witnesses, no leads. Then one more thing, already a teenager. Different years. Different families. Everyone disappeared within a few miles of the same forest. And they never found anyone. I called the police. Anonymously. I dropped the coordinates. I have attached photos. Not because he wanted to be a hero. I just wanted someone to do it. At least someone. I didn't get a call back. Not in a day, not in a week. There is silence on the internet. No news, no investigation. It was like I was looking into the same void that looked at me from behind the trees that night. And then I realized the scariest thing. Sometimes there is no malice behind creepy stories, there is no mystical horror. Sometimes there are real people behind them. Those who know how to hide their tracks. Those who act in the shadows not because they are supernatural, but because they are patient, careful, and confident that no one will go further than a couple of steps into the forest. And now, every time I hear about strange things found in the forest, I don't think about the legends. I'm thinking about the cabin. About the nail in the jam. About the silent man in the hood. And most of all, that I once stood 2 meters away from a trapdoor that contained someone else's grief, someone's disappearance, perhaps someone's death. And that I just turned around and left. This is not a paranormal story. This is a story about people. About how far they're willing to go if they're sure no one's watching.